All good.
All right, we are recording. Welcome back, everybody. And this is, it's been like a 5 month break since we've done anything. Of course, in that 5 month period, I did end up moving across a state to a different state, mildly better, in my opinion. Um, and with us tonight, we have a gentleman named Eric Wright. And he is a coworker of
Hello.
mine. And yeah, how's it going, Eric?
It's going pretty good. You know how it be. Um,
How it be, though.
it do be what it be.
Nice, nice. And tonight we're going to be talking about. We're actually going to try to do a hopefully not too cobblestoned Frankenstein review of the Phantom Menace, and then hopefully, if all goes well and as planned, we'll continue this little mini series and do one of each episode. Kind of just talk about the film as a whole, how we feel about it, what do we like, what do we dislike, what are the pros, what are the cons, what are some things that they should have done, what are some things that they shouldn't have done, and yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, Eric, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, so Imperial Transmission actually started. And I don't know how much I've told you at work, but it actually started. I really wanted to. Um, for the longest time, I wanted to not only be an actor, but I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to. Um, it really, it sort of propelled me in the last couple years. Like for example, Zack Snyder's Justice League really propelled me to want to make my own short films and sort of step
Mm-hmm.
away from acting and
Mm-hmm.
really pursue, if I can, down the road, make my own short films when I have a little more of when I have a little more, financially stable and everything. Like right now, I'm writing a script for what I call Star Wars Black Sun,
Mm-hmm.
and it would of course have to. It would follow up and have to do with it would take the bone structure of Shadows of the Empire and just sort of have like a more of a like a different spin onto it.
Yeah.
And that came a couple years ago, right before the pandemic. I
Mm-hmm.
right after I was done watching the Clone Wars season 7, I think it was. That sort of just kind of is an idea that just popped in my head, and then because of COVID, it really put a grinding halt to the acting industry. So then it's like,
Yeah.
what do you do? Well, it's like if I can't go out there and get these gigs, then I'm just gonna stay at home and create my own.
Mm-hmm.
And then so after that, that really led into, you know, um, writing small stories in my free time, and then hopefully one day I can set aside enough time to film those stories, make them happen, and then that was a bulk of 2020 and 2021, and then finally 2022 rolled around, um, and this is like February, March, and I'm just so heavily into podcasts and listening to them, like financial
Mm-hmm.
podcasts, film podcasts, occasionally politics, probably more often than I would like. But just listening to all these different podcasts, and especially listening to, podcasts about film.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this one podcast who I really follow quite a bit, and him and his friends, they were called Neurotic.
Okay.
They're pretty cool, and they really would trash on Hollywood all the time in their podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually, like I haven't listened to them in since I moved, but they are one of my favorites, and they do bring up a lot of good points about how Hollywood is just kind of a dumpster fire in recent years, and how
Yeah.
how filmmaking is not what it used to be, and we've stepped away from that. And so
Mm,
I thought a good outlet. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
no, no, no. Yeah, they definitely shifted from making those deeper stories and whatnot into stuff that's a guaranteed cash grab because any kind of filmmaking is always going to be that gamble. Um, and nowadays it's just not. I shouldn't say not profitable, but it's way too much of a gamble for these studios to make films that are, in my opinion, of better quality. Like Good Will Hunting is one of my favorite examples of that, and it's one of my
Oh,
favorite movies.
dude,
But
love that movie.
so good. But you don't see a lot of that those kind of movies being put to film anymore because it's just too much of a risk when you can throw something out with a Marvel studio behind it and may not be a guaranteed cash, but it's pretty much a guaranteed cash grab
Yeah,
for the studio.
yeah, and that was something that really just jived me the wrong way, especially with
Mm-hmm.
the Disney sequel trilogy. And there's this video
Mm.
online that I could probably send it to you at some point. But it's called
Yeah.
this guy made this video, and it's called the Disney sequel. The Disney sequel trilogy. He nicknamed it the Anti trilogy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a really good sort of like outlook. He doesn't trash the films, but he that
Yeah.
doesn't mean he doesn't let them get away for free. He
Mm-hmm.
basically takes them apart, analyzes them, points out like the common denominator of why they're not that good. And
Mm-hmm.
he calls them the anti trilogy. And the last like 5 to 10 minutes of the like 30-minute video is really good. It's kind of like it's like a eye opening.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And you know anyway, leading into this year with wanting to create the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
when I worked at Fred Meyer, you know this.
Yeah.
I had a friend who, I would talk to him about my ideas, and he really liked it. His name's Alex, and we worked the night shift together.
Mm-hmm.
Also a fan of Star Wars, and eventually I want to get more and more people involved in this, and it'd be cool to kind of sit down around a table and talk about like what does Star Wars mean to you,
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't have to be Star Wars. The podcast is meant to be like we can talk about Marvel, we can talk about DC, we could talk about Firefly, we could talk about whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, some people might not completely be interested in like the night's topic, but the more people, the merrier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but anyway, I just really wanted to create something that kind of had
Mm-hmm.
my own brand, I guess, essentially.
Yeah.
And I was tossing around ideas, and finally I came up with when Darth Vader tells one of the when he tells one of the what's his name? He's one of the Imperial generals, or not generals, Imperial. Yeah, I don't know if it's Captain Nita, but when he's talking to him on the Super Star Destroyer in Empire Strikes Back,
Mm-hmm.
he's take me out of the asteroid field so we can send a clear transmission. And I'm like, transmission. What if I did a podcast called like something transmission? Transmission. That'd be a cool name. And then eventually it kind of clicked. I'm like, I know it. Imperial Transmission. And then I could have
Mm.
like the title, and then I could have like an imperial icon in the background, and then kind of go from there. And then that's kind of how the YouTube channel sort of came to be, and eventually I wanted to have more people for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't realize that's where you got the name from.
Yeah, well, because I wanted to come up with a good idea and sort of transmission. and then, but yeah, Imperial Transmission. I wanted it to be because originally I wanted it to be just about Star Wars, and then I'm like,
Hmm.
well, no, because there's so much else that I know not only I want to talk about, that other people want to talk about as well. In for
Yeah.
films, reviews of films, video games, and podcasts. I even love talking about gaming or card games, or just
Hmm.
really. So it's sort of evolved from just Star Wars to now it's like, well, this it can be really almost anything. But yeah, and then of course, got a new job, moved up here to Washington, and here I am.
Yeah.
But I mean that was a little history on myself and everything. I mean, if you want, feel free to take the reins for a minute.
Oh, uh, I don't know where to take the reins. Do you want to just jump into the movie?
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well then, I guess the first question that anytime you talk about a movie, in my opinion, should be is what did you think of it?
Okay. Sorry for the pause. I had to fix my headset. Um,
Okay.
Now, like, are you asking me what I think of it or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What was your opinion of
Phantom Menace?
the Phantom Menace?
So years ago, I used to watch Star Wars in the order that's called the Machete Order.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've heard of it, but it basically the whole premise of it is it completely erases Episode One.
Okay.
So about 6 years ago, I was in the mindset of Episode One. What do I need that for? I don't need to watch that.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't
Doesn't
matter.
exist.
Not that it didn't exist. I don't need to watch it. I've already seen it.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
here's how I'm gonna watch Star Wars. Um, the way was Episode 4,
Hmm.
Episode 5,
Hmm.
Episode 2 and 3 as a sort of flashback sequence,
Okay.
and then Episode 6 as like the final, moment to wrap it all up.
Yeah.
And watching that really did feel like, wow, it really made Return of the Jedi feel a little more special,
Hmm.
more like the stakes were a little bit more high. Um, it had its pros and cons, like
Hmm.
everything does. But looking back now, being 6 years wiser, 6 years more experience, more knowledge, just
Yeah.
older, I can definitely say that I think that mentality is okay, but it's not great in terms of the long term, you know, in terms of like respecting the art, respecting the
Yeah.
craft of filmmaking and the work that went into the Phantom Menace.
Hmm.
Because there is a lot of cool stuff in the Phantom Menace that would get chopped off. Pod racing.
Hmm. Hmm.
People might think it's dumb. I think it's a fucking fantastic concept, and
One of
I
my
love it.
favorite scenes is the whole racing sequence in that
Yeah,
movie. And I really appreciated what the pod racing sequence was able to show instead of tell, because they hint on how not extraordinary exactly up to that point Anakin was, but they're hinting at it about how he was building stuff since like day one for himself, and that's like what he was doing while asleep for that. I can't remember his name or species, but the one guy, and then to show him,
wasn't it Greedo?
it, it, it might have been, I think so.
Go ahead.
Um,
Sorry.
but they go and they don't just tell you, oh, he's good at flying, oh, he's good at building stuff, but they show you both scenes in an action. I'm not going to say packed, but centric sequence, and he shows just he built the thing himself. It shows him working on it beforehand, and then it shows the pod racer breaking down on him during the race and him fixing it as he goes and being just a very clever little lad and also just being swell at flying. I mean, he started dead last and got himself to first place with a breaking broken down little pod racer and I can't see how some people could say that's kind of Gary Stew of him, but I don't think that's what we're supposed to take away from the scene. I think it was supposed to exemplify that he is a gifted child and there is something special about him,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
along with being a good excuse to get him off the planet.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with everything you just said, and um, there's so much. Looking back now, and if you go and rewatch the Phantom Menace, there's so
Mm,
much. Phantom Menace was the first Star Wars film that I was initially exposed to,
mm-hmm,
and from then it just sort of propelled me into this love for the universe
mm-hmm.
because the film came out in '99, and I don't remember honestly if my dad took me to see it in theaters, but I remember watching it. I remember watching
Mm-hmm.
it from a very young age and just being awestruck by the universe.
Yeah.
And from then, the rest is history. But you know, with the machete order, it's great, but because it cuts out the Phantom Menace, looking back,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, that's just not okay because it's still Star Wars. It's still
Yeah.
the Phantom Menace is more Star Wars than I feel like the three sequel trilogy. The
Mm-hmm.
Disney sequel trilogy.
I would agree with that statement. And I have my own quarrels with a sequel trilogy and everything, but the Phantom Menace personally holds like a little delicate spot in my heart. While it's not my favorite of the films, I do think it was one of the ones that helped bring me into the series because I'm a little younger than you. I was born a few years after that came out,
Hmm.
and it took me a very long time to actually get into Star Wars. Like it always been in my periphery and stuff, and like my dad was a fan of it. One of my best friends has been a huge fan of it,
Yeah.
and it didn't. It took until after high school for me to like stop, sit down, and watch all of the movies like back to back to back to really like fall in love with the world instead of just being curious and a fan of it.
Hmm.
And the Phantom Menace was the first one I started with, and it just how I don't want to say vibrant because I don't think that's the right descriptive word I'm looking for, but packed, I guess almost. The world felt like it felt not real because obviously it's a space opera fantasy type deal. It's not it's not meant to be real, but almost alive it felt to me at the time.
Yeah.
And it was just exciting to see something that grand because there's other shows that kind of do something similar, but it doesn't feel like recently in my lifetime there's been a lot that have been able to achieve what Star Wars did.
Yeah.
And for me, it all started with the Phantom Menace.
Yeah. Yeah. It's same here, and I can remember, from a very early age where, excuse me, where like go to the go to Target or something, and then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh hey, I got, all right, you can get a toy, and then it's like, oh, like getting a Phantom Menace like Lego set
Oh,
from Star Wars,
oh.
and I wish I could go back and just not open any of them,
Mm-hmm.
leave them in the boxes,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many. Like a lot of the Star Wars Lego sets, some of the coolest ones were the Phantom Menace.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, unless they go back and remake them, but it's like it's it's not the same because it's like I want the box to be in somewhat pristine
Mm-hmm.
condition, and then anyway, but the Phantom Menace. So some of the things I really love about the film is a lot of a lot of the like. First off, the music. It's John
Oh,
Williams.
so beautiful.
It's great.
Yeah.
Duel of the
Yeah.
Fates, classic.
Mm-hmm.
Banger. It slaps.
100%.
And then you also have I love a lot of the shots of the film, even though the
Mhm.
even though why am I getting a notification from Zoom that's saying this meeting will end in 10 minutes?
I don't know. I just saw the same thing.
It's like upgrade now, save 30% off Zoom 1 Pro.
Oh, they want you to pay for us to talk, my guy.
I guess so. That's that's a crime.
It
It's
is.
weird.
It's a crime against this podcast.
I've never
We'll
had
sue.
a yeah, we'll sue. We're going to sue you guys. That's so weird. I've never ever seen that pop up. They must have like changed Zoom.
They might have.
Hmm.
I don't know. I
But
haven't had to use this since college and post shutdown COVID. But
yeah, but um with oh, what was I saying? So apparently with Zoom, you need Zoom Pro to have group meetings last longer than 40 minutes. With
oh,
Zoom Pro, you get unlimited meeting time. Damn,
what stops people from just starting a new meeting then?
that's a good point. Yeah, could just if during the scheduled meeting you're about to hit 40 minutes, the host leaves and the meeting can restart with the same ID or invite link.
Oh,
Hmm,
it's like you hop out and then back in and it should reset.
I think so. Sorry, everybody, having to do a quick little bit of research on this because apparently Zoom wants my money now.
We got to troubleshoot the software.
So, during the scheduled meeting, you are about to hit the 40-minute limit. The host leaves the meeting and restart it with the same meeting ID or invite link. Okay. Well, as far as I know, I so if I left, would I just I'm not even sure how that would work. Oh well. We'll figure it out in a bit. We still got I think 10 minutes.
I don't know. It tells me 7:25
25?
now.
Oh, whoops. Okay.
7 minutes and 23
So
seconds.
maybe
21.
so maybe I'll hop out real quick and then try to hop back in.
Yeah, sounds good with me.
Okay, let me take a look. So if I hit end, I don't want it to end the meeting. I just want it to end me in the meeting. Let's see. Lock meeting. No one else can join. Maybe I don't want to do that. So interesting. So if I all right, here. I'm going to hop out and see if it'll work.
Okay. You back?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Weird. Yeah, I can. It's still giving me the countdown.
Oh, is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have to leave and come back.
No, I'll leave. I'll leave. BRB.
Man, that is really dumb. Gotta have Zoom Pro, Zoom Plus, just to have longer than a 40-minute meeting. All right, hold on, everybody. I'm gonna put a brief pause on this. Hello? Hello? Eric?
Uh, I'm I am here.
Hey, nice.
All right, so yeah,
Glad to have you back. Sorry that
glad to be back.
all right, well I guess all right, guess we're back. So, sorry about that everybody, but I was explaining how you have to have Zoom Pro or whatever nowadays. I remember back in the old days when Zoom was free.
Back in my days, we didn't deal with Zoom.
We didn't
We went to
play.
class in person.
Yeah. Back in my day when we had to use Zoom, we didn't pay for it. It was free. So the things I love about the film is besides the obviously the beautiful shots like
Hmm.
Coruscant at night.
Oh,
I can never get enough of that.
they did a wonderful job at detailing the worlds and painting them.
Yeah,
Um, Especially for the late '90s. I mean, the CGI and stuff is, I'm not gonna call it good by today's standards, but it was phenomenal.
better than some of the some of the product that we get as consumers
A
nowadays. I
hundred
feel like
percent.
it was
Yeah.
better than some of the stuff we get.
Hmm. They really did an outstanding job on giving the world a unique feeling to it
Yeah,
and visually aesthetically pleasing, in my opinion.
no, I completely agree. Um, and some of the other things I really love about the film, besides like Coruscant at night or Naboo, is even beautiful.
Hmm.
Tatooine's great because whenever you
Hmm.
go to all these different planets, I really feel like I'm experiencing like how it must feel, to acclimate to said world, said planet,
Yeah.
star system, whatever you want to call it. Like when you're at Tatooine, it feels like it would be pretty hot and dry and you know sandy there. Whereas like when you're on
Yeah.
Naboo, it feels more like a kind of a mild temperature, nice and cool in some places
Hmm.
and whatever. And then you also have like Coruscant. Coruscant to me feels like it maybe has like a smell of like a garage or an auto store,
Hmm.
where it's kind of like just that greasy sort of mechanic smell.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just kind of how I don't know. I just feel like the sensories, not it's not like a sensory overload, but the
Hmm.
senses they feel present in this film. They do
Yeah.
feel present in other films, but I don't know. That's just something that kind of stood out to me. Um, but yeah, the music is great. It's got
Hmm.
the music, it's got the cinematography, it's got the visuals, which is basically I
Hmm.
guess cinematography, like kind of
Yeah.
redundant, but it's not a perfect film. It's a good film. The dialogue is good at
Hmm.
times. I mean, I definitely have to mention the memes. The memes are gold.
Oh.
Not gonna
Ooh.
lie.
They they did a very good job at expending enough resources on spectacle and story, in my opinion.
Yeah,
And there are flaws in it, Jar Jar Binks. Um, but otherwise, it is a phenomenal film. And I know a lot of people like to sit there and crap on the prequels and stuff, but I think a lot of that is just the meme to hate something new that kind of not retcon per se their beloved original trilogy, but added to it. And I know change is difficult for a lot of people, but I definitely think the prequels helped expand on the universe a lot.
oh, we lost our boy Eric. Okay. I gotta re-invite him. It's really odd. That really sucks. They must have made this update at some point in the year. Because you should not be like this. So instead of using Zoom, shit, I might have to try to use like a Google Meeting or something because now Zoom's just. What's next? OBS won't be free? All right, everybody, we're just waiting for Eric to join. Should be joining any minute now. There he is.
Well, hello.
He's back.
I'm
I
back.
had to start a whole new meeting. I'm not sure why that happened. I'm gonna have to do a little research once we're done for our next meeting to find, I guess, maybe
Hmm.
a new program or find a way to maybe bypass the Zoom meeting because that's really ridiculous that now you got to pay
Yeah.
to go above like 30, 40 minute time limit.
Yeah, that's weird, but I get
I get it, but
that we've gotten out of that whole phase where everything's online, so they're able to build up a huge clientele base, and now they're able to monetize it a lot better than they were. I don't know how they were before, but
yeah. No, I remember when Zoom blew up
hmm
um, from when Zoom blew up from the pandemic and everything.
hmm So where did I get cut off at?
Um, well, we were talking about the Phantom Menace, the visuals, the things that we loved about it,
Hmm.
um, and we're talking about kind of just the overall feel of how we feel about it,
Hmm.
and like one of the things. So one of the things in the memes, we're talking about the memes. I think the memes
Yeah.
have added sort of that nostalgia, like because when of course when you see the memes and they make fun of the dialogue of
Hmm.
whatever, it's just it makes it even better.
Yeah. Yeah. It adds that layer of community and interaction that keeps stuff relevant in our mind and adds to the whole experience. And I think that's one reason why movie theaters are still, I don't want to say they're prevalent, but they're still like big enough that they're profitable.
Yeah,
And it adds that whole layer of community almost to going to go watch something, or that spectacle of, oh, it's Saturday night, let's go watch that new blockbuster that just came out. So I definitely think the memes have kept it not alive, because it's a fantastic show, probably would have been alive on its own, but more, or tied people closer to it, I guess is how I'm trying to describe it.
yeah, no, absolutely, I completely agree, and it like for me personally, I feel like a lot of the memes sort of started to kind of like come back around like 2016 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end of the year. I think that maybe that has to do with just Star Wars sort of being reiterated and just sort of re-rushed into
Mm-hmm.
for society when the Force Awakens was released and came out. That just really sort of brought back like, oh shit, that's right, there's Star Wars. Like
Yeah.
of course it was still alive and kicking, but it wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
it didn't feel like nearly as big of the. It didn't feel. It felt big, but it doesn't feel like as
Mm-hmm.
big as it does feel the powerhouse that it feels. That it
Yeah.
carries now. And
Yeah. It didn't feel. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
I felt like until the Force Awakens was announced, it didn't feel mainstream, like the Marvel movies or like Pixar or Toy Story or other those big you know TV or movie series feel. And so with the announcement of the sequel trilogy now, I think that brought it back into the mass public consciousness and
Yeah,
helped revitalize it in
yeah,
a weird sense, even though it was crazy popular, especially back in its day, and even leading up to the announcement. I think that announcement really brought it to a lot of new people's attention, and also back into people's attention who may have gotten off the bandwagon or.
yeah. No, I completely agree. And looking back, looking back from the sequel trilogy to the prequel trilogy, I appreciate the prequel trilogy a lot more. And I think
Hmm.
it's one of those things like you don't know what you have until it's gone.
Yeah.
Situations with George Lucas, and I feel like that's
Hmm.
like perfect analogy for him and
Yeah.
Star Wars and everything. And I didn't realize what we had until, of course, after the sequel trilogy, and then I was just like, well,
Hmm.
wow, like, well, the prequel trilogy is better than this. And
Yeah.
then that just sort of forces you to go back and re-examine and reanalyze and rewatch, like the Phantom
Hmm.
Menace, and then you appreciate it a little bit more. And
Yeah.
a lot of things that I appreciate about the film, like I guess we could talk about some of the pros and cons. Some of the pros that I have is locations. The
Hmm.
locations that a lot of the scenes take place in for me are personally interesting. I like them. The dialogue, some of the coolest dialogue, some of the coolest characters, such as Qui
Hmm.
Gon Jinn,
Oh, fan favorite,
and
personal favorite.
yeah, definitely a great fucking character.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
you also have Ewan McGregor kills it from the moment he
Hmm.
steps on screen as a young Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Day one.
You get a little more. A lot of people also hate on the Phantom Menace because of the politics, which I can
Yeah.
understand how the politic aspect of Star Wars is boring, especially like
Hmm.
in the Phantom Menace and in the prequel trilogy. I can definitely understand that, but at the same time,
Well.
like it's like a necessary evil.
Hmm. Well, it wasn't the series based on a it wasn't it started as a political allegory for the time. At least that's what I've been led to believe, and I personally am not always a huge fan of politics in my forms of entertainment, just because there's enough politics in my day-to-day life that I like to try and escape that. And that's what like Star Wars and fantasy stuff in general is for me. It's an escape from my day-to-day life. But I personally found that the politics inside the Star Wars series added a layer of realness and brought the world closer to life.
No, I completely agree. There's enough politics in day to day life. Like, I don't really want politics in my Star Wars, but
Hmm.
it's one of those things where unfortunately is a little bit necessary at times,
Hmm.
because it shows you how the Emperor comes to power. It
Yeah.
shows you how all of this starts. Like, there's Chancellor Valorum, I believe is his name. He was
Hmm.
the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic before Sheev. And, again, Coruscant. We'll always love Coruscant, and a lot of the shots
Hmm.
that they have Coruscant in the Phantom Menace just is amazing to me.
Hmm.
And I remember being, in awestruck when I saw, a lot of the scenes from the Phantom Menace, pod racing,
Hmm.
freaking amazing concept. I thought they were going to bring
Yeah.
it back for the sequel trilogy, and I was sad that it didn't come back.
It definitely is like a niche thing that they could probably do their whole own like miniseries on or something.
Hmm.
And being a guy who I used to watch NASCAR back in the day because I'm
Yeah,
from Texas.
Same too.
It's and getting to see something that I enjoy personally in a movie that I really enjoy was really nice, and it's definitely something that I don't feel like it's been mentioned since the Phantom Menace in the movies,
No, I don't
but
think it has.
it's it's concepts like that I feel make the Phantom Menace more unique than some of the other movies,
Yeah.
or at least help it stand out compared to them, because it it the whole or each set of trilogies stands out from the others just because of the technology that was able to be used to make it, the different kind of story writers and process for making them into actors and everything. But I feel like inside its own trilogy, the Phantom Menace still stands out from the other two, and a good chunk of that could just be because a lot of the actors, I shouldn't say a lot of the actors, but a lot of the characters and stuff that were in the Phantom Menace don't return later because they either die or things happen. So characters like Qui-Gon Jinn, you know, help make the Phantom Menace what it is, and pod racing is just one of those things that I really enjoyed in it, and I always love those little mini games and the video games and stuff that they'd make where you had to pod race or fly spaceships and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. It was great, and
Hmm.
you know, like what a time to be alive. When Star Wars was coming back into the limelight in the
Hmm.
late '90s, and you get to end a really great decade. And there's parts of it that weren't so great, but you get to end
Yeah.
a really nostalgic decade with a Star Wars movie before the turn of the century. To me,
Hmm.
that's like, of course, at the time I was like 4,
Yeah.
so it's like I don't really remember any of it, but it's like for the people who were our age back then, growing up
Hmm.
with the original Star Wars, or they're in their early 20s, it's like, man, they must have been jacked. They must have been hyped.
Yeah.
Like, and for me, stuff like that is really cool.
Hmm.
I know a lot of people don't like the midi chlorians sort of
Yeah.
aspect of the film and how they tried to explain the force down onto like a
Hmm.
cellular sort of level.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
think they got confused on it being a sci-fi show for or movie for a bit there when it's a space opera fantasy. But I have my own gripes and appreciation of the whole midichlorian idea. But I always found the whole the forest is just part of everything from the dirt and the ground to the humans in space or aliens in space.
yeah,
I thought that was a better just broad, yeah, it's magic, that's what it is. It's
it's
not
basically
bugs that
just
give us magic.
it's all around you, connects and
Mm-hmm.
everything. Yeah, that's what Yoda
Mm.
says.
Yeah, but I mean
Um,
I get why they would do it, or they did add that whole concept to it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, besides the just gorgeous shots, especially the
Hmm.
nighttime shots. I know I keep bringing that up, but man, Coruscant at night just looks so beautiful.
Hmm.
I really do love some of the dialogue. The plot is interesting. It feels pretty original to me.
Hmm.
Um, let's see. And then you have, they go to Tatooine, they come back, and then
Hmm.
they have to go back to Naboo, and then there's, the
Hmm.
invasion of the droid army, which, and then the Gungans fight, which is, it is what it is, but, you also have, like, the fight between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon.
Oh.
Like, that was one of the coolest fights.
Hmm. I definitely feel like they wasted Maul's potential for the movie
Hmm.
because you have like one of the most striking and iconic characters for the whole series, and he for the movie that the mainstream series for Star Wars, he was only in that one movie,
Yeah.
as far as I remember. I'm pretty confident.
He is
But now that I
in
said it, I was
he is
like,
in the animated series like
yeah,
Rebels and Clone
but
Wars.
that was never, or in my opinion, was never as mainstream. Because I'm gonna be honest, I haven't even
True.
watched any of the Clone Wars. It's
They're
on my list of to do things,
I
but
was gonna say they're pretty good. It
yeah,
starts
oh yeah,
slow. Like Rebels. Rebels is actually
mm-hmm,
really, really good. I used to just hate on it before I would watch it.
mm-hmm.
Then I finally watched it and was like, oh my god, what have I I've been this is great.
I'm missing out on so much.
Yeah, I've been missing out. And
Yeah,
actually Darth Maul was in the Han Solo movie.
I haven't watched it.
So he's basically at the end credits. He doesn't do much.
Mm,
He just does a little
yeah,
bit. He has like two lines. That's it.
uh,
But he's an older Darth Maul.
yeah. I just feel like they wasted. They put in so much effort to make the character, to design him, to give him the backstory that they did, to put him in the animated series and the books and the comics and whatnot, just to have him show up in a few scenes of the movie and then get clapped. Like,
Somehow Darth Maul returned.
yeah,
Somehow
I
Palpatine returned.
hmm I don't know. I really loved the character from like the first time you see him because he is just like such a villainous, evil, vile looking person.
Yeah.
And then you don't get much about him in that movie. And
Yeah.
I always felt like that was a shame.
Element of mystery.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so I don't know. I personally wish they would have done more to explore. I'm not asking for, or I wouldn't be asking for much, but at least not to have just outright take him out of the movie series until Han Solo was made and released decades later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, completely understandable. Um, but yeah, the movie's just the movie's good. Um,
mm,
there are parts of it where it just definitely does struggle.
yeah.
Um, but there are parts of it where it is it has its own unique, I guess,
Hmm.
overall, at least for me, it has its own like unique feel for the film, where like
Yeah.
a lot of the other Star Wars films, um, they definitely to me don't all feel the same, but
Hmm.
none of them feel like what the Phantom Menace feels like.
Hmm. Yeah. They were definitely trying a whole bunch of new things, and I feel like some of it was them just kind of throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what stuck. Um,
Yeah,
and one of the things I really appreciated about it was it felt like they started to try and expand more on the lore of the Jedi, and I see that as why they added the midichlorian stuff and them testing younglings for that kind of stuff to recruit new people into their space wizard religion and you know all the new ability I shouldn't say new abilities but the abilities that they portrayed for the Jedi. And one of my favorite scenes is when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn just like zip off screen in that like
oh yeah,
force
just
speed blur
boom.
and then never brought up again. Never seen again. But
It's like Force Run or whatever.
yeah, yeah, I love little things like that because they're quirky and you can tell that they're wanting to try new things, do more things, but then it's never brought up again. And in the movies at least.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but that kind of just tickles me in some fun way.
No,
Um,
completely. I completely agree. But
yeah.
yeah, no, you're completely right. Little things like that is what makes the film like so great. And
Hmm.
it's just one of those things that, you don't really get like in films like today. And you kind
Hmm.
of just learn to appreciate them.
Yeah.
Appreciate the silliness of Star Wars at times.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
I love the campiness of some of the scenes and stuff, and I like to dog on Jar Jar Binks,
yeah.
but when I first saw the show or the movie way back when I was like, I don't know, I think I was 5 or 6 or something when my
Hmm.
dad put it on. I loved Jar Jar Binks. I thought he was the funniest guy on earth on far or long ago in a place far away.
No, that's true. I completely agree. I can't deny it. Because when you're
Uh,
young, he was really placed there for the
oh
kids,
yeah, oh
just to
yeah.
sort of keep them engaged. Because by that point,
Mm-hmm.
their parents had to grow up with the original trilogy, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, okay, they're probably taking their kids to go see Star Wars, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, well, they got to add a little bit of like sort of kid friendly humor in there,
Mm-hmm.
or just something to keep them entertained, which I understand. Um, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was going to ask you a question. What is your favorite, I guess, scene from the Phantom Menace?
I love the final fight with Darth Maul and how it exemplifies the character traits of especially Obi-Wan and
Hmm.
how he was so ready to jump into combat, so ready to race off into the fight and you know do what he thought needed to be done. While you had Qui-Gon Jinn kind of just, every time those red shutters would fall down, he'd stop and start meditating. And I think that set up a lot of Obi-Wan's character for the later stuff.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's how his master dies. It's a very striking time for that character. And Qui-Gon Jinn was one of the, I don't want to say most in tune with the Force, but I feel like that's what I'm trying to say.
No, I completely agree
Um,
because at times he does feel like he knows more than the council.
yeah, and seeing Obi-Wan observe that stuff and then kind of start incorporating it into his own um, character later on was interesting. Um, Granted, he is still like one of the best duelists in the Star Wars series, and it's always fun to get to see him fight. But just starting off with that point and how he went on to become, I'm not gonna say as in tune with the Force, but trying to be as in tune with the Force to the point where he fully lets himself go into it, unlike Qui-Gon. Granted, that could have just been a whole no, because in the original series, he does let himself go into the Force when he dies, and Qui-Gon doesn't, and they made that after. So seeing the progression of that from the start of Obi-Wan's career, not career, but as a Jedi Knight, was really fascinating to me.
Hmm.
And that's what I see as the real start of Obi-Wan's character develop or not development, but development, I guess is how I'm going to describe it because I can't think of a better word right now.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that whole scene was fascinating to me, and
Okay.
the choreography of the fight and everything was, in my opinion, better than what they were doing with the originals, and I felt like that just kind of helped elevate it for me.
Yeah. The choreography, it definitely like, and that's a complaint I actually do have with the sequel trilogies. The choreography it feels very preppy. Like it doesn't
Hmm.
feel fluid. Like
Yeah.
the, and I know part of the reason why the fights are a little less sort of glamorous in
Hmm.
the original trilogy, but I mean, it's got
Hmm.
it has the dog fights that I feel
Hmm.
are very, sometimes better than the prequel trilogy. But
Yeah.
the prequel trilogy, the lightsaber combat is just like it's. I mean, it gets a little more sort of glamorous with episode
Hmm.
2 and 3, but episode 1,
Hmm.
the Phantom Menace, it feels very like it feels very strong. It feels very
Yeah.
stoic. It feels very intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Like with each strike, the character is intending to land a blow there.
Mm-hmm.
Not that their steps are intentional,
Mm-hmm.
per se.
Yeah.
Plus,
I
I remember when I first watched that scene. Oh, sorry to interrupt.
No, 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 you go.
I remember when I first watched the scene where Obi-Wan's in the shaft, and
Mm-hmm.
he's trying to use the Force to jump up and over Darth Maul. I remember when I first watched
Mm-hmm.
that, I was like, "Oh shit! How is he gonna get out of this? He's done for.
Mm-hmm.
There ain't no way he can, come back from this." And then, sure enough, he uses the Force, turns around, and jumps up, hops over Darth Maul, and slices him. Which
Yeah.
I always thought was interesting. When he did slice him, there's like this, you see like a momentarily sort of rush of red sort of come up
Mm-hmm.
from where he sliced. So I don't know if that was like meant to be like the
I
saber connecting with blood for it, like you see it's like drying, or is
Yeah,
that, or if
I'm
that's meant as
pretty
like sort of Sith energy kind of being released from Darth Maul's body.
I always took it as a mist of blood, which I always thought was weird because lightsabers are so hot they cauterize anything they or any living matter that they pass through.
Yeah, exactly.
And but granted, I think that's what they were trying to do
Yeah.
is just give it some more awe and shock value. Um, but I don't know. I always thought that it was a little weird that, it felt like Maul had way more time to react to
To that.
Obi-Wan. Yeah,
Yeah.
to jumping up over him and then, you know, I don't know. I always thought that that was a weird way to end the fight because
Yeah.
I felt like Darth Maul should have been able to react and that the fight should have continued and should have gone on until Obi-Wan like overpowered him, but I think it's supposed to show
He's just
Obi-Wan's
a better skilled.
tactfulness.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
very
and
very tactful.
and how he's able to better use his environment than some of his opponents, and how he's not just analyzing what his opponent's doing in the fight, but how he can leverage certain situations. Like he notices Qui-Gon Jinn's lightsaber and pulls that towards him without showing that he's pulling it towards him. And I
Yeah.
think that's the excuse is Maul just wasn't expecting him to have a lightsaber when he jumped over, which completely valid. 100% that probably is why Darth Maul didn't react, but I don't know. I always thought with how they describe the Force, they're able to sense lots of stuff. I always thought it was weird that they don't react to the Force being used around them too much.
Oh, that is a good point. Because if they can sense the Force,
Hmm.
then can you? Does that mean if somebody's calling upon the Force, dark or light, the dark side or the light side,
Yeah.
can can you sense that? I mean, I know they can sense. I sense a disturbance in the Force, and
Hmm.
that's when I think they can sense either somebody is up to. I always interpreted that as somebody is either nearby
Hmm.
or they're far enough away to where I know they're there and they're fucking with shit.
Hmm.
Like in terms of more of like a grand scheme.
Yeah.
Not, oh
I
yeah, he's using the force to, call upon the lightsaber. Oh, now I'm sliced in
hmm
half.
hmm I feel like it's been described to me as they need to be focusing on it
Mm-hmm.
to really feel slight stuff like that, but then things that really affect the world and the space around them is what gets sensed, or when immensely powerful force users are around or approaching or doing whatever they're doing. And I do know that there is a connection between master and apprentice that can usually be felt unless that connection's severed, like it
Mm-hmm.
was with Anakin and Obi-Wan. But I don't know. I always felt like if you're in combat, you should be trying to pay attention to stuff like that,
Yeah.
especially with people that can telekinetically lift and move objects. You would just think that'd be common sense.
No. Yeah, I completely agree. No, I definitely completely agree. And just to let you know, we're hitting up at a 1 hour mark. I didn't know if you're
Okay.
wanting to keep going or how you feel personally.
I mean, I'm good to wrap up this topic, but
Yeah.
I probably should be hopping off here soon.
Okay. Um, yeah, I feel like there's a lot that we still haven't even covered with the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we could
Part two, baby.
maybe do a part two just for episode one of Phantom
Mm-hmm.
Menace. So if you wanted,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
if you
I'm down
wanted,
to do
I'd be
that.
okay with doing another episode just about the Phantom Menace, but coming back with more, like, really detailed,
Mm-hmm.
um, coming back, I guess, with notes of
Yeah.
like, hey, he said this line. What do you think that means?
Yeah,
Because
totally.
they're, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I
You're good.
rewatched the show yesterday in preparation for this, but I didn't make notes like I thought I was going to, and I definitely would like to actually sit down and analyze the movie itself instead of just, oh, this was a cool scene, or this was kooky. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm down to do a second episode if you are,
Hell
or
yeah.
a part two to this one.
Absolutely. Because I feel like it's one of those things like if we're trying to wrap up an entire film in 1 hour in terms of a review and everything there
Hmm.
is to talk about just one movie, I mean, this isn't the sequel trilogy, this is the prequel trilogy. So I feel like
Hmm.
there's a lot of ground to be covered.
Yeah.
And plus Zoom being Zoom doesn't really help. So
Yeah.
maybe a quick workaround to that is, I guess 40 minutes is up, you let the timer run up,
Hmm.
and then it's like, okay, we're hopping off, and then we just rejoin a meeting because I guess each meeting is 40 minutes,
Yeah, and that still
which
feels weird.
40 minutes times 2, it's what, 100 no, that's 80 minutes. So
Yeah,
that's really,
1 hour and 20.
it's an hour and 20 minutes, which would be it would be nice. It just sucks because it's like, oh, you need Zoom Pro to
Hmm.
to not have a 5 minute, like. I guess we could always do it where it's like, yeah, we're gonna take a 5 minute, intermission, and
Hmm.
then we'll be back on, and then just continue from there. But really, it's not an
Hmm.
intermission. It's because we don't want to. It's because Zoom is making us. It's not because we want to,
Yeah.
people.
No, guys, we want to sit here and talk, but Zoom wants us to stop
Zoom
and then start.
Zoom is infringing on my rights.
Uh,
All right. Well, thank you so much, Eric. It was nice to sit down and get to know you a little bit better and talk to you.
yeah.
And I'll definitely come better prepped to the next episode. I guess part two of the Phantom
Yeah.
Menace, where we could talk about more of the pros and cons of like the real nitty gritty details of the film. So
Hmm.
that'll be
Yeah, I'm totally
nice.
down.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, well,
Well, thank you, and
of
thanks for
course.
anybody
Thank you.
who watches. We love doing what we do, and
Hmm.
I love having a lot of fun doing this type of thing. Podcast. I think I just think it's fun.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely.
All right. Well,
Well,
you take care, sir, and you have a good night.
all right. You too, man.
All right. See ya.
See ya.